chapter 6, verse 8. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given to them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. So the first destiny that we have is death by sword. Let's read another one of those verses. Revelation chapter 13, verse 10. He that leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He that kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. What the Lord is telling us here in Revelation 13:10 is that he is implementing the eye for an eye. Now, as bondservants, we know that Yeshua said there's a higher law for bondservants. Let the master take care of that. But if you insist on being a free man, then, this is how you do it. Eye for eye, measure for measure. So if you lead somebody into captivity, you're going into captivity. If you kill somebody by the sword, you're going to be killed with the sword. So those who oppose the oppressors by armed battle are the ones who fit this category. They are the ones who, are patriots, and they're saying, get your guns and let's go after those people in the White House. That's something you don't want to do. Now, there is another destiny, and that is captivity for 10 days. Revelation 2:10. Fear none of those things which you shall suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that you may be tried, and you will have tribulation 10 days. Be faithful to the death, and I will give you a crown of life. So, the reasons that you might be put into prison are because, you are proclaiming your faith in Yeshua. It could also be for just civil disobedience, like refusing to get the mark of the beast, refusing to get vaccines, and so forth. And then there are going to be those who escape the sword, and that is destiny number 3. Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 50 says, You that have escaped the sword, go away, stand not still, remember the Lord afar off, and let Jerusalem come to your mind. So in other words, if you hung around Babylon because you weren't sure what to do when the altar goes up, and you managed to escape the sword, and you're a believer, and you managed to escape the sword because the Lord is merciful and he did miracles for you, when you finally get to a spot where there's like a lull in the fighting, and your head is down and you don't know what to do next, and it says, get up, go away, stand not still. So wherever you are on the earth, this is for you to go away and stand not still. Remember the Lord from afar off, and let Jerusalem come into your mind. And by the way, I don't want anybody listening to this who is not an American to say that this only has to do with America, because believe me, this sword stuff, this fighting stuff, war and all that nonsense that's going to be going on will be worldwide. You need to be getting to where the Lord said to go as well. You need to make sure that you escape. So this is not just for us here who live actually on Babylonian soil, And then we have another type of destiny, which is that there are going to be overcomers. Now, there are 2 types of overcomers. There are those who keep the faith until the death, and they die, and they await resurrection. Now, there are some people who are called to martyrdom. And then there are other people who escape to the places of safety, and they survive. In Revelation chapter 21, verse 7, we learn that while some may die, they will still inherit. Because it says here, he that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. And in Revelation 7:14 it says, and I said to him, Sir, you know. Now let me back up and frame this scripture here. There's someone that John is talking to, and he said, the angel, the messenger actually, said to John, who are these? Who is this great multitude of people that's standing here before the throne? And I said to him, John, said to him, Sir, you know. And he, the messenger, said to me, John, these are they which came out of great tribulation and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So we see that you can be a survivor and an overcomer through either death or through surviving. And I want to make that clear because not everybody is called to the same destiny. That's something that you have to take up with the Lord. Now, let's go on to Isaiah chapter 26, verse 19. Because I want to make it clear that both types of overcomers, those who are martyred and those who overcome, enter the kingdom together. Isaiah 26:19. Your dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing, you that dwell in the dust, for your dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. They both enter the kingdom together, see? In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 52, it says, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the dead shall sound. Oh, and by the way, Yom Teruah, another name, another phrase for Yom Teruah is the last trump. That's what it's called. The great trump is always associated with Yom Kippur, Jubilee, and all of that. But the last trump is called Yom Teruah. This is how we know that the resurrection happens at the last trump, and that, the resurrection happens when Yeshua returns bodily to the earth, not just in a cloud where we have his presence, but now we're going to have his body with us as well. He's going to return and put his feet on the ground in Israel, in Jerusalem, on the Mount of Olives. That happens at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. So now, let's go over the summary of destinies. Some are going to try to fight this beast, and they're going to die by the sword. Some of those people will be believers. Some of those people won't be believers. If you're a believer and you die by the sword, you will go into the kingdom, but you will be resurrected. Captivity. You will go into captivity. Yeshua said you're going to have 10 days in there. Hold on to your faith. Whatever they're going to put you through, hold on to your faith, because you will inherit the kingdom. And then number 3 is that they're just going to kill people outright. So that's a martyr's death. And then there are those who remain alive until Yeshua's return. So there we have all of the destinies. Now, let's talk about what happens with the survivors. And this is an area where you're going to have to decide what the Lord has in mind for you at the end. Does he have in mind for you to go into captivity? Does he want you to stay where you are so that you can be captured and possibly witness to someone and save their soul? Does he want you to become a martyr so that you can be one of those voices crying out from under the throne? We have to take these things into consideration. We also have to take into consideration the timing of when we are going to leave. I showed you all those various times when you could leave Babylon. See? So you have to get before the Lord and ask him to have his will in your life. That is the only way you're really going to inherit the kingdom, by the way, is if you let him have his will in your life. So let's look at what happens with the survivors. The fact of the matter is that those who are called to flee to the safe places, they are the ones who will survive. They go to the hidden places, and they will survive. Let's look at that in Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 28. The voice of them that flee and escape out of the land of Babylon, and I might say that's a global Babylon, not just American Babylon, to declare in Zion the vengeance of the Lord our God, the vengeance of his temple. Now, you know that this, what's coming, has to do with the people trampling on his temple. And so our fleeing out of Babylon is our declaration that we don't like that they're over there trampling on our God's temple. You see? Zechariah 2, verse 6. Ho, ho, come forth and flee from the land of the north, says the Lord, for I have spread you abroad as the four winds of the heaven, says the Lord. So where he's spread us to, we need to come out of there. And then in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 26, and he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far, and will hiss to them from the end of the earth, and behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. So he's going to send a sign. Now, I believe that sign is when the altar goes up, when we see that happening. I mean, and if we get into this fall and we see that, an asteroid hits the earth and we've got a bunch of earthquakes and the Gog-Magog war happens, I'm saying to you, like, okay, maybe that's really a pretty good sign. But when the altar goes up, that's when we really know. Revelation chapter 12, verse 6 talks about the woman who flees survives. It says, and the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared of God that they should feed her there 1,260 days. That's the 1,260 days that is found in the book of Revelation in one of the places. So the only safe place is in the wilderness that is prepared for the woman. And it's not just any wilderness. It's the one that's prepared for the woman. It says in Revelation 12:6, I'm repeating this, she flees to the wilderness where the Lord has prepared her a place. So if you go outside the designated wilderness, your chances of being one of those survivors instead of one of the captives or a martyr, if you do that, then you know that you're really risking that you're not going to make it. There is a caveat, and I believe I'll get to it later on, but I'm going to say it right now as well. When the Lord returns, he does gather his people from all over the earth. So during the Great Tribulation, there are going to be people who are in the safe designated places. And there are still going to be believers who actually make it through the Great Tribulation without being captives and without being martyrs. And he's going to gather them from the nations, you see. In fact, we learned that, Isaiah, I believe chapter 60 or 61, talks about the Gentiles who make it through the Great Tribulation, and now they're in the kingdom. So people are going to survive this thing all over the earth. But the majority of people are going to die. We read about the great numbers of people that are going to die in this Great Tribulation in Scripture. So if you're outside the designated wilderness, if that's where the Lord has told you He wants you to be, then you just need to be there and understand that He's either going to bring you through it and gather you alive from there, or He has called you to be captive or a martyr. And, that's between you and the Lord. This is an area that is outside the designated wilderness. And in fact, I believe that Americans are in greater danger of being killed than people who are living in other countries. People are going to die all over the earth. But because of the great destruction that the Lord is going to bring to America, I will make a special note to American believers. If you are in America and you think you're going to survive here, the Bible says that Babylon will be utterly destroyed to the point where no one can inhabit her. So you need to be thinking about, if you leave this wilderness, America, you need to make sure that you know where the Lord wants you to go. And I'm going to show you those places in a little bit. America is not the designated wilderness. You're not going to survive in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, or in the hills of Idaho, or in the caves of Ozarks. You're just not. Most of this area here is outside the designated wilderness. There's just a little tiny place on the earth where the Lord has a place prepared. So let's go and learn some more about that. Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 16. Therefore say, Thus says the Lord God, although I have cast them far off among the heathen, and although I have scattered them among the countries, yet will I be to them as a little sanctuary in the countries where they shall come. Therefore say, Thus says the Lord YHWH, I will gather you from the peoples, and assemble you out of the countries where you have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. Now, the Lord has fulfilled that promise in verse 16. He has made our little homes and our little churches little sanctuaries in all the countries of the globe where we're scattered. But He says, I'm going to gather you out of there and assemble you. Well, one of the places He's going to assemble us, of course, is in Israel at Temple Mount. But the other place that He's going to assemble us is in His wilderness that He has designated for us. Isaiah chapter 4, verse 5, And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion, and upon her assemblies. Now that word there is mikra. He's going to put a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night, for upon all the glory shall be defense. Let's go and look at that word mikra. It's Strong's 4744, and it means something called out. Like, people who are like called out of Babylon, or, something like that. You see, we know that mikra means, you're called out of, the paganism. You're called to an assembly. you're called to the holy convocations and so forth. And I was just being a little bit snide there, because he's going to mikra us. He's going to assemble us at a place where there's going to be cloud and smoke by day and the shining of a flaming fire by night. Now, I am not going to categorically say that I don't think, that if you stay in South America, that the Lord is not going to give you smoke and, the cloud and the by day and the fire by night. I'm not going to say that. I don't have that. That's above my pay grade. I'm not finding up or down on that in the scripture. But I know for certain that there are designated places that he is going to assemble us, where he is going to put a cloud and a smoke by day and the shining of a flaming fire by night. And I want to show you another way that the Lord uses mikra. In Numbers 10 verse 2 it says, make you 2 trumpets of silver, which, by the way, trumpets and shofars had particular calls, and that meant certain things were supposed to happen, so those items are used to call. And it says that you may use them for the calling, the mikra of the assembly. So again, we see that associated with calling and assembly, and for the journeying of the camps. Truthfully, we will be going on a journey. Jeremiah chapter 13:24 says, therefore will I scatter them as the stubble that passes away by the wilderness. So we need to know, what is a wilderness? Well, this is a wilderness out here where we live now. We're being dispersed among the countries, according to Ezekiel 20:23. It says, I lifted up my hand to them also in the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the heathen and disperse them among the countries. That is one wilderness. And so we're going to go from this wilderness, you see, this kind of wilderness where we're scattered. And again, in Isaiah 11:11, it says, it shall come to pass in that day, which is great tribulation talk, that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, that we've been talking about, and from Egypt and Pathros and Cush, Elam, Shinar, there's Shinar, see, Babylon, and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea. And he's going to recover and bring back the remnant of his people. I believe it's important for us to also remember that it will be a remnant that starts out where we lead the way, where we go from a wilderness to a wilderness. Ezekiel 20 verse 35 once again says, and I will bring you to the wilderness of the people, and there I will plead with you face to face. He's going to bring us to the hidden places. Zephaniah chapter 2 verse 3, seek ye the Lord, all you meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be you shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. And we know that to be not only the 1,000-year reign, but it's a Yom Kippur. It starts at Jubilee and so forth and so on, as I have, I hope that I made all that clear. So the hidden places are also the designated places. And those designated places are where the bride will be prepared during the Great Tribulation. Isaiah chapter 2 verse 21 says about the hidden places, go into the clefts of the rocks and into the tops of the ragged rocks, for fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty, when he arises to shake terribly the earth. Remember the great shaking that's coming? When he's shaking the earth, That happens at a future Yom Kippur. I'm sorry, at a future Sukkot. Remember? The economic collapse and all that stuff is, associated with um, Yom Kippur, starting at Yom Kippur at the end of the Shemitah year at Sukkot is where it starts. The great shaking, all that time in that area, that timing area. It says he's going to shake the earth terribly, and when he does, he wants us to go into the clefts of the rocks and into the tops of the ragged rocks. Now, there's a place in the world that I have seen that, wow, you really, you can see the clefts of the rocks and the tops of the ragged rocks for sure. The Song of Solomon in chapter 2, verse 14 says, "O my dove, that are in the clefts of the rock, in the secret places of the stairs. Let me see your countenance. Let me hear your voice, for sweet is your voice, and your countenance is comely." Now I want to look at that word for stairs. It is 4095. And it's madrega in the Hebrew, and it is by implication a steep or inaccessible place. See, that's why the Lord chooses this place, is because it's a steep place and it's an inaccessible place. Where is that? I'm going to show you right now. This is the place where the Lord has said his people will be safe. I want to show you that on the east side of Israel is actually there is an unbroken range of mountains that run all the way from Lebanon in the north to the Gulf of Aqaba in the south. And it's as the land rises up out of the rift in that central plateau there. So that's one of the reasons why that area is inaccessible. On the other side of that, you have much desert. It's kind of hard to get to it. Now, I want to share some headlines because people are already beginning to flee to that area. In December 2014, we had this headline, "A New Future, What Jordan's Christian Refugees Want for Christmas." That came out of American Al Jazeera. Now, I know we're not going to be doing Christmas, okay? But these people, they don't know. But obviously, if they're already there, the Lord has selected them to be there because, as we've seen, some people don't make it there. Like those Libyan Christians who went the wrong direction and went up to the EU, they didn't make it to Jordan, you see. These people who are there wanting something for Christmas, they won't be wanting that once they get told about the Torah and what the Lord has said for our lives, how he wants us to live our lives. That'll change. In May 2015, it says Iraqi Christians find safe haven in Jordan's churches. And so, the first place that the woman will be that I'm going to show you is Jordan. Isaiah chapter 11 verse 14 says, "But they shall fly upon the shoulders of the Philistines toward the west. They shall spoil them of the east together. They shall lay their hand upon Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them." Now, the children of Ammon is the capital of Jordan. In Daniel chapter 11, verse 41, it says, that is talking about, the conqueror, the Antichrist, "He shall enter also into the glorious land that is Israel. And many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand: Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon." Now, that again refers to the capital of Jordan. The next place I want to show you is a place called Teman. It comes from Habakkuk 3:3. It says, God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. Teman was the name of one of the Edomite clans. Teman is actually a grandson of Esau, and he had an area of land there according to the Bible, and his area of land is actually around where Petra is. The word Teman also means south, and so in the south of Jordan. And again, as I said, Teman was a grandson of Esau. It says here two Edomites, and also refers to the region there. In Isaiah 43:6, it says, I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, Teman, keep not back. Okay, he's saying to the north, give up. So remember, he told us to come out of the north country, right? To the south, he's saying, don't keep my sons from coming. Bring my sons from far, and my daughters from the ends of the earth. So we're to go out of the north and go toward the south, you see. Now, there's I know that a lot of people live in the southern hemisphere of the globe. There's the spiritual connotation to this too. If you're in the north, you're in captivity. If you're in the south, you're getting out of captivity. You see, there's a connotation about that as well. Now we're going to go back to Habakkuk 3:3 and look at another place in that scripture where he says we will be, and that is Mount Paran. God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. And we're going to also see that Mount Paran is an area where there are Ishmaelites there. That's partly where the Ishmaelites are from, in that area of Paran, Mount Paran. And then Basra, Isaiah chapter 63, verse 1. Who is this that comes from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. And in Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 2, behold, he shall come up and fly as the eagle and spread his wings over Basra. And at that day, great tribulation talk, shall the heart of the mighty men of Edom be as the heart of a woman in her pangs. And so we see Basra. And then again, Basra in Micah chapter 2, verse 12. And by the way, there really is a place in Jordan called Basra. And it's not the same place as Petra. I mean, if you get online, some people confuse the two. And in fact, I might want to, let me see. Where am I at right now? Let me see if I can find that map again for you. Hang on. Okay, I did find the map. I went back up in the frames of this PowerPoint and found that map. I want you to see here that the territory of Edom, right here, and you'll see this is the territory of the Ishmaelites. It's the wilderness of Paran, Mount Paran. But this area of Edom this is Basra right here. And this is the little town called Teman. And then this is Petra down here. And then we see up in here some other towns that are on this map, but they're not specifically mentioned in Scripture. But the area of Ammon, the area of Moab, the area of Edom, and then we're going to see also the area of the Ishmaelites. And look, it looks like a tiny little place on the map, but I can tell you from experience, This is no small place. When you get there, you just look around and go, wow, I had no idea it was so big and so magnificent. It may look little on a map, but don't underestimate it. And so it says in Micah 2:12 that I will assemble, O Jacob, all of you. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. Are we not Israel? Are we not Jacob? And he says, I will put them together as the sheep of Basra, as the flock in the midst of their fold. They shall make great noise by reason of the multitude of men. And then we have Edom. In Amos chapter 9, verse 12, it says that they may possess the remnant of Edom and of all the heathen which are called by my name, says the Lord that does this. I have a couple other scriptures about Edom, but it occurred to me when I was doing this, why did the Lord decide that he was going to put us right where Esau's headquarters was? Well, they refused to help the children of Israel when they were going through the wilderness the first time. And so I believe that this is the Lord saying, you know what, Esau? Guess what? You're not going to get to be there, and my people are. So he's just kind of, the Lord having a little nose thumbing session there with Esau. Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 22. It says, behold, he shall come up and fly as the eagle and spread his wings over Basra, and at that day shall the heart of the mighty men of Edom be as the heart of a woman in her pangs. Isaiah 11:14, they shall fly upon the shoulders of the Philistines toward the west. They shall spoil them out of the east, and they shall lay their hand upon Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. And I'm just doing that because I forgot to make Edom red there. Jeremiah chapter 48, verse 40. We're going to learn about Moab. We just saw that on the map. For thus says the Lord, behold, he shall fly as an eagle and shall spread his wings over Moab. Keriot is taken, and the strongholds are surprised, and the mighty men's hearts in Moab at that day shall be as the heart of a woman in her pangs. So, if you're not a believer, you're going to be scared. But behold, he shall fly as an eagle and spread his wings over Moab, so that you won't be scared. And then we have a place in Scripture that is known as Selah, Seir, and Petra. Isaiah chapter 16, verse 1 says, send you the lamb to the ruler of the land, from Selah to the wilderness, to the mount of the daughter of Zion. So those are the specific places mentioned in Scripture. And now, one of the things I want to mention about when if you decide to go there is, first, that you really do need to get the Lord's timing. He needs to tell you, are you to leave now? Are you to wait until Yom Kippur? Are you to wait until Sukkot, Hanukkah, Purim, Passover? He needs to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you that. I have given you what the Lord says in Scriptures. I've laid it out in the timelines that you've seen. But I'm not going to tell you that you got to get out of here today. In fact, I am not going to tell you that you need to get out of here at all, because your path, your destiny may not be that path. Now, if you are not a survivor and you do get to be a martyr for the kingdom, you know that automatically cleans you up and prepares you for being a part of the Lord's kingdom, right? I hope you do know that. I don't want you to think that you're going to miss out on something if he calls you to be a martyr, because the apostles were martyrs, and they're going to be in the kingdom. They're going to be part of the bride. I truly believe that. And so we just need to be settled and happy with whatever the Lord is telling us. And where else might we find places for the woman to be cared for and nurtured? How about in Gilead, Carmel, Mount Ephraim, Bashan, and even Lebanon? Let's take a look at those places. Bashan, Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 19 says, I'll bring Israel back to his pasture. He'll graze on Carmel, on Bashan, on Mount Ephraim, and on Gilead. His hunger will be satisfied. The context of Jeremiah 50 verse 19, that whole chapter of Jeremiah rather, is that we're leaving Babylon. Jeremiah chapter 50 and 51 are about Babylon, what's going to happen to Babylon, coming out of Babylon, and so forth. So Bashan is a designated safe place given by the Lord. Now, if you will notice on the map that Bashan, Gilead, Bashan and Gilead are both on the east side. They, again, are in Jordan. But they're on the east side of Israel along that same mountain range that I told you goes north and south. And, of course, Carmel and Mount Ephraim, they are in Israel, and Lebanon, of course, is, where Lebanon is just north of Israel. So Bashan is right there on the southern edge of Syria as well. And as I said before, it may seem counterintuitive to run to these places when we know that there are certain people there, namely the Islamic State, that might want to do us harm. But, we have to follow what the Lord says, because during World War II, in fact, before the start of World War II, many Jews began to feel the need to leave Germany, and they did, and they went to Israel, where, who did they meet? They met the Palestinians in Israel. It seems like the Palestinians are their natural enemy, right? Yet that's where they went. Those people saved their lives. But the people who did not leave Germany, 80% of them died. And so we have to take the clues where they come to us. In Psalm chapter 68, verses 22 and 23, we also see that Bashan is a safe place. The Lord says, from Bashan I will bring them. I will bring them from the depths of the sea, that your feet may wade through blood. The tongues of your dogs will have their portions from your enemy. And then in the book of Micah, chapter 7, in verse 12 and 14, it says, at that time armies will invade you. Use your rod to shepherd your people, the flock that belongs to you, that lives alone in the forest of Carmel. Let them find pasture in Bashan and Gilead, as they did long ago. So Bashan and Gilead have been places of refuge, even in the past. Now look, we're going to take a peek at Gilead. Zechariah chapter 10 verse 10 says, and I will bring them once again out of the land of Egypt, gathering them from Assyria. I will bring them to the land of Gilead and Lebanon, but there will not be enough space for them. Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 19 again says, I'll bring Israel back to his pasture. He will graze on Carmel, on Bashan, on Mount Ephraim, and on Gilead. His hunger will be satisfied. And I guess I just read that, huh? Yep, I did. Let me see. We'll go here to Micah chapter 7 verse 14 rather, where it says, use your rod to shepherd your people, the flock that belongs to you, that lives alone in the forest of Carmel. Let them find pasture in Bashan and Gilead, as they did long ago. We read that a little bit earlier too. And we're going to read again Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 19, where it says, I'll bring Israel back to his pasture. And again, we have Mount Ephraim in that verse. I know I'm repeating verses, but I want to emphasize the places that are there in the scripture. So if I have to bring them out in the same verse repeatedly, then that's what I'm doing. And then we're going to learn that Lebanon in Hosea chapter 14 verses 5 and 6 says, I will be like the dew to Israel. Israel will blossom like a lily, growing roots like the cedars of Lebanon. Israel's branches will spread out, and its beauty will be like an olive tree with its scent like that of Lebanon. And in verse 7 it says, those who live under its protection will surely return. See, that's Lebanon. Their grain will flourish. They will blossom like a vine, and Israel's scent will be like wine from Lebanon. I found it significant that it said those who live under its protection. They're in Lebanon. Isaiah chapter 92 verse 12 says, the righteous shall flourish like palm trees, they shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. So here's the idea with me showing you all these places. We just have to be careful to go where the Lord will lead us at the time that he tells us to go. You know, unlike what we have heard prior, I am beginning to understand that this ingathering is going to be a process where some people will go earlier than others. You know, some will go early, some will go in the middle of the Great Tribulation or just at the start of the Great Tribulation. Some will be gathered by the Lord from wherever they are on the earth when he physically returns. We just need to remember that the pattern of the Exodus is the same, but that just some of the details are different. Turn your captivity and have compassion on you, and will return. He will return and gather. He will return and gather from you from all the nations where the Lord your God has scattered you. If any of you be driven out to the outermost parts of heaven, like, if they've got you captive on the moon, guess what? You're getting out of there. From there will the Lord your God gather you, and from there he will fetch you. The reason the Lord is doing this, and I'm running out of time, but the reason the Lord will gather people from the nations who have survived the sword is for his glory. It's all about his name. He tells us that he's not doing this for our name's sake. He's doing it for his name, because his name is on the line. He's made promises. He's made a covenant. He is on the line to deliver. So he's going to gather you from wherever you are on the earth. So some people are going to be still out in the scattered wilderness. Some people are going to be in the designated wilderness, but from wherever we are, he's going to gather us for his name's sake. Now, the Lord makes a promise in Psalm chapter 12, starting in verse 5. He says, because the poor are being oppressed, because the needy are sighing, I will now arise, says the Lord. I will establish in safety those who yearn for it. Catch those words. I will establish in safety those who yearn for it. The words of the Lord are pure, like silver refined in an earthen furnace, purified 7 times over. That number 7 there has prophetic significance. And in verse 7, he says, you, Lord, will keep them safe. You will guard them from this generation forever. I want you to listen to just a little bit more about what I have to say about, is Obama the Antichrist? Is this year the year? Is 2016 at Passover the year? And I'm going to tell you unequivocally that I don't know the answer. But what will happen if we don't see these things start this year? What does that mean? The whole world is saying, this year is the Jubilee. The whole world, even the Pope. He's got his false Jubilee thing going on there, see? And he's created his own year of Jubilee. So everybody's thinking this is it. But what if it turns out that it's not it? What if Obama turns out to be not the president that comes out of Babylon that turns into being the Antichrist? I mean, what if all that stuff doesn't happen? What does it mean? It means that our calculations about the year are off, and we have to go back to the drawing board. That's all that means. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means that we have not reached that time yet. We have not figured out when the right time is, and we have to just keep watching for the signals and the signs. The ones that I gave you in part 1 and the signals and signs I gave you in part 2. And you'll always be able to refer back to those 2 timelines about when the scriptures say things are going to start rocking and rolling. At some future year, if it's not this year, you're going to be able to go, hey, look, I saw this happen. Oh, look, oh, that happened right there it's happening at Sukkot. It's happening at, it happened at Hanukkah. Oh, look at that. See, you're going to be able to, this information is timeless. What you have to do is you have to pray. Pray. Perhaps you even have to fast. You also have to watch. You have to be watching. This is why the Lord says to watch, because we see the signs. Look, since I did this part 1 teaching, I was talking in there about how Obama wants to bring back imperial cult. Imperialism, monarchy, king worship. I talked all about that in that part 1. Well, this morning on May 26th, I get this headline about, and by the way, it came out of a mainstream media website, and it was about that we need imperialism back. That the problem in the Middle East, that's not really what he said in the article. What he really said in the article was, the reason we've got this problem in the East is because we lack imperialism there. And it's created this chaos because we don't have, imperialism. We don't got people having kings and worshiping kings. Of course, in my red comments in Beast Watch News, I said, well, really, the problem isn't that because, we've had kings for 6,000 years and we've always had this kind of turmoil. That's not the problem. The problem is that he's right that we don't have imperialism in the Middle East anymore, and Obama wants to take it back to imperialism, and that's what's causing the strife. But you see, I had just talked about that a few days ago, and then it comes out in the news. I'm like banging my head on the wall. So we just have to keep watching. And I hope that if you're not a subscriber to beastwatchnews.com, that you will consider subscribing, because I am putting the headlines in there that have something to do with fulfilling Bible prophecy. And the closer we get to the time, whether it's this year or in some other year, you're going to see so many more prophetic things happening that it could just really excite you or overwhelm you, whichever way you tend to go. Anyway, I hope that you have enjoyed this teaching. Shalom.
Okay, well, I think that was very well done. I actually made notes on those places of refuge, and there were many places in Jordan. Let me get my notes straight. And if I don't count Jordan itself, then I come up with 12. If I included Jordan, but these places were in Jordan, then so I don't think we should count Jordan as well. It came up to 12. If we included Jordan, it would come up to 13. But again, I think that would be double counting. But I thought it was very, very interesting that when she was talking about Bozrah in Micah chapter 2, verse 12, she said, I will assemble Jacob. Do any of you recall with the first Exodus where Yahweh assembled them? It's been a year since we looked at that, and I couldn't have answered that question right offhand either.
Are you talking about right when they left Egypt?
Yes.
That was Sukkot. They met at Sukkot, 27 miles our first night. They walked 27 miles, I believe, and it was Sukkot, and it was a military base where Pharaoh would get all his captains and all his chariots, and they would designate and put everybody in order. And that's what Moses did with the children of Israel. He got everybody in order so they could get going in a timely fashion. That's where they gathered them.
Exactly. Exactly. That's correct. That was said perfectly. It was Sukkot. And in that book, I'm not even sure the name of the book that Shauna Manfredine and her mother made. Let me see if it's at the top. Well, I'm in chapter 1, temporary shelter, Sukkot. It goes into that. And
it's called to
do what?
Called to Canaan.
Oh, that's the name of the book. Call to Canaan. Thank you, Dana. Call to
There's three of them. Yeah,
Okay.
rules for the road.
All right, very well done. But it reads in here, transition at Sukkot, the bondage of Egypt behind them and their bread dough wrapped in women's aprons. The tents and tired nomads set up their first camp at Sukkot, meaning temporary shelter or booths. Sukkot in the Egyptian language stood for the place of transition, the coming out of darkness into the dawn of a mysterious new beginning. In Hebrew, this name stands for a quick rise from the lowest level to the highest. Not only had the new nation moved quickly from a low state to a high one, but we too move from a lost in slavery state to a state of being free in Yahusha when we begin the spiritual exodus. And that actually begins at the foot of the crucifixion tree. We move from darkness into light. We move from the walking dead into eternal life. And the chapter goes on. It says, consider the literal meaning of the word sukkah, says the Fos Emis. While it is customarily translated as hut, it may also be related to the word soket, to gaze ahead. The sukkah calls upon its occupants to shed their physical limitations, look beyond shortcomings, and achieve their full potential. This can only happen through a relationship with Messiah, the deliverer from Egypt. I'm going to skip down a little bit. Because it was characterized by immense areas suited to assembly, Sukkot was the spot the formidable Egyptian army used to assemble in preparation for their military expeditions to the north. Yet right here, under their military noses, so to speak, Moses quickly organized the children of Israel. Significantly, the end is being told from the beginning. We might wonder how Moses got past these guardhouses with nearly 3 million people, plus millions of livestock and countless wagons. And how is it that this part of the Exodus story is largely untold in Scripture? Perhaps it was not mentioned because the Red Sea crossing eclipsed its significance. But moving so many escaping ex-slaves right by one of Egypt's largest military bases must have involved a great miracle. Perhaps it was akin to YHWH bringing a deep sleep upon the Midianites as Gideon and his band approached in the night. The scriptures state that the children of Israel left Egypt the night of Passover, which is actually the first day of unleavened bread, as the evenings precede the mornings in a biblical day. And the Passover was followed by the 7-day feast of unleavened bread. Little detail is recorded until it is later explained in Leviticus. Here we find that the congregation should eat unleavened bread at this time of the year in commemoration of eating it during their deliverance from Egypt. Now, we know scripturally the day begins at dawn. So there are some differences in some of the writings, but basically we're on the same track. And I have this highlighted too. Tracking from Goshen across the Sinai Peninsula to the Red Sea crossing took 8 days, but the camping places between the two are not recorded. Only the campsites that fit the types and antitypes for the last days are scripturally labeled. Thus, we who wholeheartedly search for end-time truth may find the pathway for our own exodus from spiritual Egypt. And closing some of these highlights from her book is parallels to the last days. In addition to the spiritual application, which we may make from the campsites of the children of Israel during these 40 years, we may follow a figurative parallel during the last 40 days on earth. If this proves to be true, we may expect to literally live during that time in temporary shelters under his wings, in his pavilion. Having gathered what provisions we can carry, we will enjoy the manna he provides. Our bread and water miraculously supplied, we will be spiritually and physically protected while the wicked rage over the possibility that the fire of Elohim with us may torch their lives. Revelation 12, 1-6 talks about the people of Elohim as a woman being taken into the wilderness for 1,260 days, which is 42 months. These 42 months will cover the 42 encampment experiences of Elohim's people in their wilderness. This woman of Revelation will be carried on eagle's wings. And in Exodus 19:4, we hear YHWH telling his people in the first Exodus that they were being carried on eagle's wings through their experience. As Yahushua came out of Egypt to fulfill prophecy, Matthew 2, verse 15, and we are to walk in his steps, 1 Peter 2:21, we may grasp the threefold meaning of this journey through the wilderness. His sevenfold promise to them is for us as well. Number 1, I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, Exodus chapter 6, verse 8a. Number 2, I will deliver you from their bondage, Exodus chapter 6, verse 6b. Number 3, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and great judgments. Exodus chapter 6, verse 6c. Number 4, I will take you for my people. Exodus chapter 6, verse 7a. Number 5, I will be your Elohim. Exodus chapter 6, verse 7b. Number 6, I will bring you to the land. Exodus chapter 6, verse 8a. Number 7, I will give the land to you for a possession. Exodus chapter 6, verse 8b. If we would partake of these covenant blessings, we need to begin with the attitude of Sukkot. We leave spiritual Egypt behind and move quickly into the transition from darkness into light. We view the world as a temporary dwelling place, but our backs are to the Egypt we've left behind, and our eyes and hearts are fixed on a better land. So we didn't even get into the Torah portion of scripture in Exodus 12 and Matthew 26. I had hoped we would make it there too, but that's okay. Yah takes the controls and we go where he leads. And I believe we covered a lot of territory. And that presentation that Kimberly did was outstanding scripturally. I never had heard any presentation that really focused on the cities of refuge in the end of days, as well as she showed that. I mean, we had read those scriptures before, but how she broke it down, showing how you read it and some of it's already happened. We recognize that. But then other parts signifying in that day and the armies of heaven, those were all clues that now going back over them kind of jump off the page. And when we read them, we don't think that they're just for a past time, or now we read them and see how they can apply to us in the end of days. So,
Libby,
yeah.
when she was saying how you were just talking about how Moses got everybody together on this, and they were gathering for Sukkot, and that's all. They were all gathered together, and but we are so far apart in the sense of our geographically in gathering together for that Sukkot. So he would have to gather us supernaturally because you're in Louisiana, April's in Kansas. I mean, we can't be sitting with each other physically all at once right
That's
now.
right. That's exactly right.
Unless it's like a FEMA camp that they were put into during that time. Then we're all together, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and there were other parts in that chapter that when they got to Sukkot, they actually arranged their formations by their tribes. And we know they were marched out in groups of 5, and that's 5 several across. I mean, it was like she said, practically 2.5 to 3 million people. And so they got organized, they got set up, they got grouped by tribes and all of these things. And yes, it was by Yahweh's right hand. He led them out the first time, and it's going to be by Yahweh's right hand. He leads us out the second time.
But what tribe do we don't have?
Yes,
there's
we
the
do.
12, and we have the 12 tribes, but which tribe do I belong to?
He'll tell you.
Oh, okay.
He'll tell you. He'll say,
Okay.
Mary, you go right here. And,
okay.
and also, you know, she brought out in the presentation, as well as in the book that Shauna and her mother did, about his wings. He will gather us with his wings. Well, what wings does he have? Well, think about the living creatures. Think about the living creatures. That's why I think that understanding of who the living creatures are, they are the wings in which the redeemed souls are gathered in and dwell in. They are the dwelling places until those that have passed on get their glorified bodies. They travel with the throne room of Elohim. They couldn't keep up without the living creatures being nestled in the wings of the living creatures. It's the wings and the wheels that help move them. They are the chariot of Israel, in my understanding. Now, I know others have a totally different viewpoint on that, but those are his wings. That's what he talks about in Psalm 91. He will protect us under his wings. It's all right there. So it's very interesting. Dana, you have your hand up.
Yeah, this morning when I woke up from a slumber and I was laying there praying, and I was thinking of all the years that the Heavenly Father has protected me despite myself. And, you know, I write, and I believe that pen and paper is like activation of the Ruach HaKodesh. Once I start writing in a journal, it's unbelievable what comes up. And I remember when I first accepted the truth of the Sabbath, I left Bakersfield, I left Calvary Chapel, and I moved up to Pacific Union College, a Seventh-day Adventist community, because I wanted to be around people that taught about the Seventh-day Sabbath. And I didn't know anything else but that. And I rented a room from some students, a married couple that were going to Pacific Union College to be Bible workers. And I rented a room, and I was about 22 years old. And in that room was a huge map of the United States. And I'm talking, this thing was like 6 feet high by 10 feet across. It took the whole wall. And I remember one morning I woke up and the power of the Ruach came upon me, and I knew there was going to be great, great, great destruction in the United States. I mean, like she was talking about, like she talked about in her presentation just now. And it just verified that what was shown to me when I was 22. And I still believe that. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't have any money, but I got this really big desire in my heart that he's going to fulfill his word. And he's promised. So there's so many scriptures that 1,000 will fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand. With your eyes, you will see the destruction of the wicked. He's going to take care of us.
Yes.
You know, our job is to get sealed and get sin out so he can take care of us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, he's in control. He's in full control. Thanks, Dana. Yes, Mary.
Dana said, like, he doesn't have the money, you know. I think even the super wealthy people think they have it all set, like the guy that stored everything up in the barn, some set for life. I don't think our security should be with the money anyway, because, and I'm not saying that your security is, Damon, I'm just saying in general, my husband, he's like, oh, wow, we sold our house and everything's paid off. Okay. And he feels the security by what's in the bank. And I'm like, no, you know, because that could be, they can close the banks up, steal the money, take it all away, come and take your house away. Nothing is secure. The only thing I said I'm secure in is I'm counting and banking on Yahweh to take care of me. And he's not a liar. He said he would take care of me. So, you know, and
Right.
that's where my security lies, not in the bank account, not in my possessions on this earth.
That's
you
right.
know?
And
Because it's all going to be wiped away.
that's right. That's right. And
We may have to depend on a crow to give us someone once told me we may have to depend on a crow to give us our food, you know?
Oh yeah, a raven. Yeah, like
Raven.
Elijah.
Yeah.
And just like with the first Exodus, they didn't leave empty-handed. Their sandals never wore out. They had provision. They had everything. And he's going to do it again. The first Exodus was our map, if you will, for our greater Exodus. So it's very, very exciting times. And he will provide cities of refuge. And, you know, some may be martyrs, just like the apostles were martyrs. And we know that the church of Smyrna would be imprisoned for 10 days in the book of Revelation, and they go into direct conflict with Satan, as well as the remnant of the woman's seed go into direct combat with Satan. So
they can't give us the shot. Like say we refuse it, so they hypothetically they're lining us up in a FEMA camp, and they go, "You're getting it." But they can't give it to us whether we like it or not. They can take our life for not taking it, but they can't force that shot on us. They can't hold us down and give it to us.
No, and if they do something like that, that's a whole different thing, because that is totally against a person's will. If someone held you down and shot you with something, Yahweh's going to take. That's not going to be a problem. You have to consent to have the mark of the beast, which I think is that vaccine. I thought that was interesting, even though her recording was in 2015. She said how some may be thrown in prison or martyred because they won't take the mark and they won't receive of the vaccine. Well, little did she know in 2021 we'd be listening to her teaching back in 2015 and how applicable it is today.
There's just too many precious stories in the scriptures. When Nolan did Obadiah, I rewrote that 30,000 times. I memorized it. I could not believe that there was that much historical application in 21 verses. I mean, you got all three applications of Ezekiel's wheel. What was it like then? What was it like during the time of the Messiah? And what's going to happen in our day? And we're Joseph's flame. We're the judges of this royal order. So if we can just remember these promises he's given us and not lose heart. You know, he's given us so many promises. I just love Joseph's flame. I sat down and wrote a song in 5 minutes. I just love Joseph's flame. I made cards. I made Torah to the Tribes cards with the teachings of Awakening Israel, and go check out Obadiah. I mean, thousands of them. I've put them in gas pumps and bathrooms and hospitals. I've put them everywhere. And I think I only got like 20 left. For the past 3 or 4 years, I've just been passing out all these cards. Please go check out Obadiah. Sunday pastors, you need to look at this. You know, these are precious promises for us. So I'm holding on to Joseph's flame.
All right. Now, is Joseph's flame, I can't remember, is that talked about in Obadiah, Danon?
It is. It's Jacob's fire, and then he calls it Joseph's flame. I think it's between verses 19 and 21, I think. There's only 21 verses in that whole.
Okay. Great.
And when you decode it, the King Jimmy actually kind of does a misservice. They call it Joseph's flame, but when you decode it in the Hebrew, we're judges. We're literally the judges. And then you go over to Psalms 149, and it says that we're going to judge kings, literally going to put them in chains. And then Isaiah 60, says the children of the east are going to come to our light. There's just so much, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together.
Absolutely.
That's why I like to hear the positives instead of always hearing what Satan has in store for us. What does Yah have in store for us? And I think that that's a better study all around, because his plans are null and void. He doesn't even know it yet. Yeah, but he's done.
Yeah, he's a defeated foe. Absolutely. And Yah will pour out his ruach on his people. April, okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, she has her hand up. I didn't put my hand up. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You might be just following their conversation. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't following the conversation. I just wanted to make a little statement here. I just wanted to, for the next, when the Tuesday night starts back up, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in about the revelation with the emphasis on the churches would be, I thought that would be good. I just wanted to put my vote in for that.
The revelation on the churches.
Yeah, to go back through Revelations and have emphasis on the churches.
Okay, that's in chapters 2 and 3, right? You're speaking of?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, we can do the whole thing. I just was like, thought we would give more emphasis to the churches this time around.
Yeah, that would be good. And I think that's what Bill was interested in. He's been focused on that study, so he might have a lot of input on that as well. That would be great. I love those voices that have those radio voices like Bill and Dana, and they have those cool voices that, you just, your ears just perk up and listen. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, they got good frequency.
Oh yeah, they have good frequency and tone. Okay, April.
Well, when she first started out, and I've been thinking about this, we who have been chosen from the foundations of the earth, I think that's talking about the Melchizedeks. Can we do anything to help others grab a hold of this? Because we have already been pulled out. We have already seen all the fallacies of Babylon to come out of her, my people. And no matter what I seem to say or don't say or whatever I try to do, they just don't seem to get it. So those are the people, it sounds like he will take us to different places of the earth, that he will feed us with the manna. Is this group, the Melchizedek group, the group that she is referring to? And is there hope for those that are still in the churches to come out to be part of the judges of the Melchizedek order?
I would say, April, as far as what we will be ready to do, we have entered into covenant with him. We do understand we are in covenant with him. We also understand that we are his kingdom of priests of every tongue, tribe, people, and nation. And I believe we are going to be his witnesses in Revelation 11. And he will endue us with powers from on high to really, because his desire, this time of tribulation, is to awaken those that have been in a stupor, or they just didn't want to change because they always did it that way. They will, that's who we're going to be witnessing to powerfully. And yes, there will be we will see a great falling away, but we will also see a great gathering. And when people are deceived and thinking that the animal sacrifices and this so-called third temple is a good thing, the witnesses are going to stand and say, no, that's not a good thing. You are trampling on the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach, just like Kimberly referred to. when all that starts taking place, his people, his witnesses are going to take a stand and be voicing truth. And they'll be doing that for 3.5 years, 42 months, straight on witnessing. People will hate them. They can't shut them up until the beast arises out of the pit and kills them, and then they lay dead in the street for 3.5 days before he raises them back up. But yeah, it's going to be, what
Is that where, is that where you got the first half where they are witnessing for 42 and then cut off dead for 3.5 years, actually, the time of the reign of the Antichrist?
Yeah. I haven't in my mind, I know that could be for 3.5 years that they lay dead in the street, or I haven't come to understanding if it's 3.5 literal days or 3.5 years. I look at it right now as 3.5 days, but I know some people look at it as 3.5 years. And at first, when Kimberly was going over her timelines, I was thinking she had put the 1260 and the 1290 toward the latter half, but then later on in her talk, it's clear that she's put 1260 in the beginning, and the 1290 extends beyond that point. And so that's where I had it. And then the latter 3.5 years is where I see the 144,000 coming into play. And I look at them as more, I mean, they're sealed. They are more like a military force that Satan is fighting against. And probably it's only 144,000 because numbers mean nothing to Elohim. I mean, he doesn't, I mean, sometimes the fewer the better, because it's all about knowing that he's the one that is defeating them. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Danon.
I was just kind of wondering, has anybody thought about what the 1335 is? I mean, that 1335 is right there with the 1260 and the 1290. And I've heard Charlene's pitch on it, and I want to believe it. I'm just going, there's a lot of us that are going to be martyred. But could we be raised in a 1335?
Yeah.
What is that 1335? Nobody's saying a word about it. Nobody. It's the 1216.
Yeah. Well,
what do you see, Dana?
Well, do you think that the 144,000 is like taken up and then replanted? Have y'all heard anything about that? That's replanted in the during the tribulation?
Oh,
so,
yeah, Donna.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because the two witnesses are killed in Revelation 11. They lay dead in the street. Well, in my mind, 3.5 days. And they are called up to heaven. It doesn't say which heaven. And I believe the New Jerusalem at some point will be hovering above the earth and not on the earth, because even toward the very end, when Satan gathers the armies again, they come up over the breadth of the earth. So not until the new heaven and earth is formed where do I see the New Jerusalem sitting down on the earth. But wherever the two witnesses are called up to in heaven, the next scene that we come to in Revelation 12 is the scene of the woman clothed with the sun, the moon at her feet, the 12 stars. It appears that Judah and Israel have come together as Israel. The woman gives birth to Israel, his firstborn. It's the child is birth. Yahusha is the head. That child also is caught up to the throne room of Elohim. So there's some catching of ways going there. But then, Donna, what you're talking about, we see the woman up in the heavenlies, but then toward the end of the chapter, midway in that chapter, SA10 is kicked out, and toward the end, we see the woman on the earth, and SA10 goes to war with the woman, but the earth helps the woman, opens up, and she's given two wings like an eagle and flown to the wilderness and nourished by Elohim for times, and half a times. But then Satan turns to go make war with the remnant of her seed. The woman that comes back down, possibly as well as the chosen group of the 144, that's where they may come from. Because who's to say, why should we leave out those that have gone on before us? I bet there's some apostles. I bet there's Paul. I bet there's Jeremiah and Daniel and stuff that want to be part of that 144. Why shouldn't they be? Why shouldn't they, have that privilege to war against SA10? So I don't know, Donna, but I kind of see some kind of exchange, catching up and maybe a coming back down.
Yeah, that's what I think, that like they're caught up. The 144,000 comes back with the anointing and the power and the
Yes.
all of that stuff to help during the tribulation.
Yes, and they are sealed and set apart.
So that heal people and all of the stuff that we're empowered to do. I don't know exactly the list, but that whole
Read
list.
Joel chapter 2 will pretty much give you the list. It says that we are going to stay up with the angels, the horsemen, and we're the footmen. We're literally going to be right on their tails.
Right.
We're going to have
be empowered.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be in train. Well, I think that we go into some type of training.
Yeah, I mean, they are chosen.
Right.
12,000 from each tribe. They are selected. And
right.
when you come out with an even number like that, just like through all the Bible, the armies that were chosen, it was just an X amount of people. And so that's a clue to tell us that they are a hand-selected group. Hand-selected. That's what I think. And they are a military group of mighty warriors for Elohim. Getting back to the 1335.
Like what Satan does with his little selected group that runs the governments and stuff. And
Sure.
they're like hand selected and groomed for their evil.
Yes.
Kind of interesting.
Yes, indeed. And Dana, back to the 1335, Shauna puts that 1335 toward the end. A lot of people put it toward the end. Personally, I put it at the beginning, like the start of the count. It extends beyond the first 1260. And because the scriptures say, blessed is he that makes it to the 1335. And yeah, if you make it to the very end and you're still living, well, that's wonderful. Absolutely, you're blessed. But you're really blessed if you make it to the 1335, because they, I believe, may very well be taken up and called up to Yah. I'm trying to remember, there was something else I connected to 1335 in our Daniel study, but it doesn't come back to me right now. But there was a certain scripture that I connected to 1335. I wish
Charlene's the only one I've ever heard even tackle it. She did it one time about a year ago. She gave her 2 cents on it. It was really good. And she's the only one I've ever heard tackle it. She's open for grabs. Well, It's open to study.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different perspectives on those timelines, and it's good to contemplate them, but not get hung up on them, because ultimately the 2300 day timeline in the Revelation time period will be where the most of the action takes place, because at the beginning of the 2300, the animal sacrifices will be initiated again. So that would occur sometime after that lull, that first 220-day lull at the very beginning. So that's why, he wants us to start counting, and we'll know where we're at. And if nothing, like Kimberly said, if all these things don't start coming together, well, we go, we don't have the timing right. Go back to square one and start over and keep on watching and observing. April, you have your hand up.
Yeah. This has been a couple years ago. Psalm 68. You have to have a couple different versions, and I didn't write down what they are, but it says, I want to read just a little bit. Sing unto Yahuwah praises to his name. Exalt him that rides upon the heavens by his name, Yahuwah, and rejoice before him. And I'm going to skip over quite a few verses, and it says, Yahuwah gave words, great was the company of those who published it. Kings of the army did flee apart, and she, that's the woman, that tarried at home divided the spoils. And though they have lying among the pots the heavenly stones, ye shall be as the wings of a dove that covered with silver, and her feathers were as yellow gold. In here, it talks about this company, and the company are women. They're not men. Like it is suggested that the 144,000 are men. This suggests that they are women. And then it talks about them leaping on the hills. Well, that's the same type of wording that's used in Joel, where they will not break rank, and they will leap upon the walls and go through the windows and that sort of thing. And the chariots of Yahuwah are 20,000, even thousands of angels, and Yahuwah is among them, as in Sinai, in the holy place. And thou shalt ascend on high, and thou shalt lead captivity captive, and thou hast given gifts to men, yea, for he the rebellious also, and Yahuwah will dwell among them. Blessed is Yahuwah, who daily gives us benefits, even Yahuwah, the of our salvation. So that's Psalm 68. And there was, I think it was a decided misinterpretation where this company, it's written in company, but company are a group of women. So I felt that was really interesting that we haven't really looked at what that has said in relationship to where we are in time and who's who.
Right. And yes. And it's also interesting too, at what point will we not distinguish between male and female?
I know, and it really doesn't make any difference, does it? Because he says male and female, Greek or Jewish. Yeah,
that's right. At some point, I mean, it could mean either. It's just his believers. It could be female, it could be male on this earth represented, but when chosen,
we're his bride, so it doesn't matter male or female.
Oh, that's a good way of looking at it, Donna.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Very good. Yeah, that was great. I'll have to read Psalm 68. Thanks, April. Yes, Maxie.
Yes, Dr. Pigeon had a presentation a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or month and a half, and he used everything in there. He said all the verbiage is female in that passage in Revelation. I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And he put a lot of emphasis on the fact that it says, and they sang a new song, which no man could sing.
Right. Only the 144,000. Right.
Implying that women sing a different, they carry a different vibrato than men do.
I just hope I can sing, period. When I get to that point, I'm just looking forward to being able to carry a tune in that bucket. Or more than a tune in a bucket, whatever.
Libby, maybe they're referring to the fact that people like me who can't sing, no one could sing like me. No one could get that tune.
That's me too, Mary.
Choirs pay me not to join, I'll tell you.
And Maxie, I'm still pondering about what you shared last week about were there any correlations to the firstborn being slain in the book of Revelation? I'm still pondering that one, and because Israel is Yahweh's firstborn, and the enemies will be coming at his firstborn hard and heavy. So I'm still pondering if there's any correlation to that in the book of Revelation. And you have your hand up still, Maxie? Yeah.
Yeah, a little different subject, going back to what April was saying about, people converting over. I have a sense, and tell me if I'm wrong about it, but I have a sense that as the world government begins to crunch down on those churches that synchronize the church, I think the more their situations will have changed, and they will be looking more and more and wanting to be more and more in tune to Yeshua. And I think if we can get, I was just reading in Matthew today, this week, I think it's Matthew 10, you spread the word, and if they don't receive it, you dust off your feet and you go to the next place. And I think that's where we're at right now. You just make sure everybody knows. You have some answers. They don't want it. Fine. I dust off my feet. I go to the next place. And we don't take it personal.
Right. That's right. He's just asked us to share the gospel message, and it's up to the person to receive it or not. So.
And that's not to say that down the road, when circumstances change around them, that they won't be seeking you out.
Correct.
And looking for answers.
That's right. Because we know he doesn't want any to perish, and the whole purpose of the tribulation is to shake people out of their stupor, wake them up, get them out of, the trivia and small things of this world, and get them focused on life. Where will they go after they die? And who do they belong to? What altar are they going to? What Passover are they going to? Are they going to the Passover of Cain, or are they going to the Passover of Abel? And all of these things. And the Passover is, and we will be looking at that as we go along, maybe into next Shabbat, about the Passover being the night of watches, but it's also the feast of fleeing. It's also known as the feast of fleeing.
Do you still think that's relevant?
Yes.
I do too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I like the idea.
You like the idea of the night of watches, Maxie?
To stay up. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. We've enjoyed it for the past couple of years and plan to continue to do that. And that was part of the mandate to partake of the Passover with our loins girded and staff in our hand. And, you know, they're eating the Passover, and it says, don't let any be left over till morning, meaning, well, they had to be up all night because they wouldn't have just ate and then gone to bed and left it out on the table. No, they were eating on it throughout the night. They were just waiting for the time to come out and gather. And so they were eating, and when it was time, they would make sure none was left over.
Libby, how did that day go? Okay, they had Passover, they killed the lamb, they ate it during the night. They stayed up until the sun rise. And I remember reading in scripture, tell me if I remember right, but I think then they went to bed. But when did they leave for Sukkot?
I think it was the killing of the firstborn. Everybody, I think it was they were all screaming and stuff when they left.
Yeah, that's a very good question, April. And I pondered that myself because it made it sound like it was the following day that was when daylight came. They were probably the cries started still on Passover, because it was the death angel passed over, the scriptures say midnight, but Gil brought out the point that midnight is a modern day term. The death angel passed mid of night. And so there were probably cries starting even before dawn broke. And at what exact time were they? Because they were then to gather the gold and the silver and all of these things. There was 2.5 to 3 million people. And I've pondered that as well. I believe in some areas, though, it talks about it being the same day. So
the passage that I was reading just a while back seemed to indicate that it was the day before that they asked for the silver and gold already.
Yeah, and I think whenever those people started dying, they were just started like, yes, get out of here. We, we'll just take this, take that, get out of here. They were just like throwing the stuff at them, what I understand.
That's why I really was hoping we would get to Exodus 12, because we need to go through that with a fine-tooth comb and think of all those things, because the Feast of Unleavened Bread is a set apart day too. So that's another reason why I had trouble seeing them packing up.
They had the blood over the door. They had to have the blood they had to be indoors.
Yeah, they had that. Yeah, Mary.
They had to be indoors during that time when the angel death was passed over, because if they were out and about, they didn't have the blood, didn't have the protection of the blood.
Absolutely, Mary.
And
absolutely.
That's like us. Hey, light bulb.
Yeah.
We have the protection of the blood.
That's
in
right.
The house.
We are washed by the blood of the Lamb. This is our house,
Yeah.
and we are covered by the blood of the Lamb, and so the death angel would pass over us. But yes, they were instructed to eat with their loins girded and their staff in hand and their sandals on, and do not go out of their house. They were told that not to go out of their house until the next morning. And so I believe that next morning they probably headed out, but at the same time, that's the first day of unleavened bread. And I didn't think you were supposed to do any traveling or anything on that, but so that's why I'm looking forward to looking back through all of these chapters and reading through them again and seeing what Yah reveals to us. And Dana, you have your hand up. You may have some insights too.
Yeah, I know that the unleavened bread is a 677, and there's no servile work done on that day, but you can cook, and I'm sure you can walk 25 miles, because that's what they did on the first day of unleavened bread, man. I don't think they would have done that on a seventh-day Sabbath or the Day of Atonement. And as I'm watching this, I've been watching the feast being restored since the day I came into the feasts, and we're the repairers of the breach. We're the ones. And going back to Passover, I thought we had Passover down, because we just got in the first fruits. We saw first fruits, Joshua going into the land, and it was a big game change because Dawn brought in a whole different calendar in the Masoretic text, and that's what Nolan did, and he got that. I really praise the Heavenly Father for that teaching he did April 16th in 2016. And then we've got atonement. Atonement's not finished yet. We haven't got atonement down. Some people are eating on the Day of Atonement. Some people are fasting. We're repairing the feast. We're coming out of the Dark Ages from the 1800s, and we're living in the time of the Sabbath more fully. And one of the biggest desires for me is to confess my faults to my brothers and sisters when the timing is correct. And in Joel 2, going back, when this coming Passover, it's just been shown to me that we really need to stay up all night. But what do? We're not cooking a lamb. Are we going to have a Zoom platform where we're on stage and just having fellowship all night and we stay up, and then we're up all day on unleavened bread? Boy, we're going to be tired. What do we do for that time?
Oh, well,
And I keep. Go ahead.
There's not a problem with doing stuff. I'll tell you what, Danon. I mean, it's a blessed time. It's not boring. We're talking about and looking at scripture, and we're sharing, and sometimes people bring on loved ones that want to hear about the feast. So sometimes we're witnessing to other people. We're breaking bread together. We're doing the whole Passover ceremony. We're washing each other's feet. We're just sharing special things, and it's a fantastic time. I think, well, Donna's made every one of them.
And I think it's being restored. When you said that a couple of weeks ago, it was like, whoa, this really makes sense. We're not doing Passover correctly, and we're restoring the feast, and that's our job description. But in Joel 2, it pretty much makes it clear who we are. And then down in verse 12, it says that therefore also now saith Yahuwah, turn ye even to me with all your heart, and with fasting, and with weeping, and with mourning. There's a time that we really, really get serious about our walk. And it says that we're going to confess our faults one to another. Well, I haven't seen that yet. I have not seen that at all. But I know it's coming. And could this Passover night be a part of that? I'm witnessing the feast being restored on my watch. And they're being restored. And I just see these things coming, and I want to be a part of it. That's all.
Yeah, and we were contemplating that night of watches, Dana, and I mean, it was really an amazing insight when I first came across that scripture, and as it was to you. And what I'm really wanting to do this year, because you brought out a very important point about when Yahusha had the Passover meal with his disciples, and the discussion of was that Passover or was that not Passover? And well, it clearly seems like it was on the 13th. However, we have to really keep in mind Yahweh was doing a new thing through Yahusha. I mean, I just read that scripture today where it equated Mashiach is the Passover. So we don't want to also miss a redefining Passover as it merges into being a covenant confirming meal, because we do not any longer slay a lamb and roast a lamb. The Passover has become the Melchizedek covenant confirming meal. So and in scripture, it's identified as the Pesach. Because I want to share the Pesach with you. Yahusha's telling them. So this year, I want to really look at those scriptures and see if we're missing something else. And to me, the night of watches was clearly depicted when Yahusha came to his apostles that were sleeping, saying, can you not wait and watch with me for 1 hour? So that's what I'm rather wrestling with this year. I want to make sure we haven't missed something, because that covenant confirming meal and his presence, knowing he is the Passover, knowing he is the Jubilee, there's just some really heavy stuff that he's revealing to us, Dana, and I just want to make sure, just because it was a certain way with the first Exodus when they actually had to have a lamb, but we have the lamb. We have the Passover. We have the lamb. And it's a whole different thing. And that hadn't happened for thousands of years. So I just want us to go through those scriptures, and I want us to go line by line and really look at them, because I think he has more to tell us about that night versus the traditional Passover. I don't know what it is, but I just think there's something else there we may need to look for.
You know, in Exodus, it says that this is a statute forever in all your generations. It wasn't done away with at the cross.
Exactly. That's a very good point. Yes.
Big time. It's big time. And I threw it in his lap, and I haven't heard a word yet. And I'm just kind of interested to see what the group's going to do with it, because we're restoring the feast. And I think everybody needs to take a look at it and say, hey, should I be doing this? You know, put it out there, because I've never heard this before.
Yes, and it's a memorial. It's a memorial forever and ever. So if it's a memorial, I mean, we know we don't slay a lamb anymore. We know it is a memorial. We never want to forget the meaning of Passover, and because it points to our greater Exodus. So anyway, it's look, there is so much that we can focus on Passover night that, hey, it will be full.
Is it wrong for me to ask brothers and sisters, is this something we're supposed to look at? I mean, I'm an agitator. I've always been an agitator. And sometimes I rub people the wrong way. And is it okay to say, hey, you guys, doesn't it say we're supposed to stay up all night for Passover? It's a statute forever. How come we're not doing it?
Oh, yeah, I think it's, it's totally okay. I don't know why people aren't doing it, because once I saw that, I was just like, I discovered it before anyone told me. Donna had been in groups that had seen that verse before, and she had been with groups that had stayed up all night. And when she shared that, I said, really, Donna? I said, I had not known that until I was preparing for the Torah portion, and I read it, and I said, it's the night of watches. And then how the scriptures tie in, just like today, if we would have got to some of those scriptures, it goes to Matthew 26 about the Passover, sharing with his apostles. And so then that's when I connected the two. I connected the night of watches being possibly connected to that night. But like you were saying, was that the Passover night or was that the 13th? But why are they calling it the Pesach? Why does the apostles talk to Yahusha and Yahusha talk to the apostles about it being the Pesach? Except,
well, there's three different definitions for the word Passover.
Okay, well, good. That's good to know. Do you know them right offhand?
No, I don't. That's one of those naughty teachings I'd never really memorized. But, they were going to go prepare for the Passover, and then they had the Passover meal, which that was the 13th. That wasn't Passover. Passover was the next night. Actually, the next day.
But they called it the Passover, and he is the Passover. Yahusha is the Passover.
Exactly.
So it's
exactly.
I want us to look at it with fresh eyes, because this, not very many believers even understand they are his kingdom of priests, and that they have entered this covenant relationship, and that when we wash each other's feet, that's a priestly duty, and remove our sandals of authority. And even Yahusha told his apostles, you don't fully understand what I'm doing to you, but you will. They didn't even get it. It was a priestly transference. They were coming into the Melchizedek covenant confirming meal as his kingdom of priests. So that's what I'm saying. We just need to keep an open mind of what is Yahusha trying to communicate to us, because the scriptures are calling it the Pesach. And what is he trying to tell us? Just like when he led them out on the first Exodus, he told Moses, this is the beginning of months for you. He can set and reset anything he wants to. He is the one that can change times and seasons. He is the one that created time and seasons. So I just want us to really dive into his word and look at it from all angles, and contemplate what he is conveying, not only to the apostles at that time, but to us. Because
we're the repairers of the breach. We're the ones who pop the code. And another one I don't hear anybody ever talking about is the day after Passover of us staying up all night. When we enter into unleavened bread, if you don't keep unleavened bread, you're not sealed. It's the mark in your forehead. It's the mark on your hand. And you know what the counterfeit is of that, the mark of the beast. They'll either be the sealed, or they'll be the marked. So in order for us to be sealed, we have to keep unleavened bread. We have to. If we're not keeping the feast, might as well kiss it goodbye. Unleavened bread is our sealing. Exodus 13, 6 through 10. And it shall be for a sign unto thee upon thy hand, and for a memorial between thy eyes, that Yahuwah Yahuwah's law may be written in your hearts and in your mouth, and with a strong hand hath I led thee forth out of the land of Egypt. So unleavened bread is our sealing, man.
Yeah, and it also makes us understand what leaven is. You know, yes, it's ridding, you know, and confessing our sin to before Yahweh and asking for forgiveness and cleaning those things out of our lives that are not pleasing to him. But also leaven is clearly defined in the New Testament scriptures, and I'd have to look it up, but he was speaking of the doctrine of the Pharisees, not to incorporate the added doctrine, the added leaven. So we have to even understand more about, it's not so much getting the leaven that makes bread rise out of your house, it's getting your life in order, it's getting the false doctrine that you've been taught out of your life, getting the false doctrine books that you've purchased in the past out of your house. That's the real leaven. So I think we even need to contemplate what leaven is, as Mary got her spatula. I saw your spatula. So yeah, a lot of good stuff. Absolutely. April, you have your hand up?
Yeah. The first Exodus, it had to be different because, and it wasn't until they got to Mount Sinai that he made specifications and ordinances and what I want to say, statutes, because they wouldn't have any clue what unleavened bread really was all about, because it really wasn't a statute until they got to Mount Sinai, where he put it and he wrote it with his own finger.
That's true.
So
very good.
yeah, it's just something that I was thinking about.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you shared that. That's an excellent point. That was really good.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, very
It's just like it's just like when they got to Mount Sinai. Could that be in the count of the Omer? But they didn't even know about the Omer count yet. They were just learning how to count to 7 with the manna week.
Yep. 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 Awesome. Awesome. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, my question is, I'm a little confused because I was reading most of the feast. It does require some kind of lamb sacrifice. So if we keep the Passover and there is a lamb, the lamb is Yahusha, why is that still would be irrelevant now to keep it? I mean, not the feast itself, the memorial part I understand, but I just don't understand about the lamb.
Yeah, the lamb is no longer needed because Yahusha gave his life once and for all. He was the Lamb of Elohim. He fulfilled, that was the type and shadow of him coming to fulfill that role as the Passover lamb. So there's no need for any more sacrifices of a lamb, nor to eat a lamb at Passover.
And
it's now the bread and the wine and the washing of the feet.
Okay, so also how about I guess after he had the Passover meal with them, he went to pray in prayer, right?
Right.
So he was saying, why are you not praying? I'm just paraphrasing, of course. He was asking them why they are not up and praying. So it's the being watchman for that night is also including the prayer as well?
Well, he was praying Yahweh's will be done in his life. He was praying, he knew what lay before him. He was greatly distressed. He sweated the droplets of blood, and he was praying that his Father's will would be done. he did not want to die prematurely in the garden. He came to be the Lamb of Elohim, but he was so greatly distressed and he was so weakened by what lay before him that he wanted his disciples to watch and pray with him, but they slept. And in his weakness, an angel was sent to him to strengthen him, because we know he wasn't asking not to be our Passover lamb, because that was his whole purpose for coming. Even when Satan had influenced Peter to tell Yahusha, let it not be so that they would kill him. And that's when Yahusha looked at Peter and said, get behind me, Satan, because he knew full well that was the reason he came, to lay down his life. So, yes, I mean, prayer is always part of our lives and is definitely part of that night.
So basically, so basically what he told them in the first covenant where to do it as a memorial and be watchful. And I guess when Yahusha came to spend that night with them, that also, if we do the prayer, is not really breaking the requirement of what he wants us to do, basically without sacrificing the lamb. Washing, he washed their feet, and there's so many things that they did, right? And he also told them when he gave them the bread and the wine and broke that and said, do this as a remembrance of me.
Mm-hmm.
So when we celebrate Passover, we could do all those things and it will be a valid way of celebrating Passover. I'm sorry, I'm trying to learn about the feast. So
No,
I'm
I
asking
think
a lot of
no, I think what you're saying is correct. And if anyone wants to add anything to what she's sharing, no, I think that's how we observe Passover. We still observe Passover. We now observe it with in remembrance of him, the Lamb of Elohim, through the elements of the bread and the wine, and we remember our marriage covenant to him, and then we wash each other's feet as our priestly duty, reminding one another that we are his kingdom of priests and we have taken off our sandals of our own authority and we walk in his authority. It is no longer we that live, but he that lives in us and through us. We are the red heifer that also went out to the altar outside the gate. Heifer is a female. Because we have been crucified with Yahusha. Yahusha is also representative of that heifer, the red heifer, paraduma, and taking our sins and dying in our place. So there's so many aspects of Passover and the altar, and what altar do you go to, and how do you treat the lamb? Not so much a physical lamb any longer, but how do you treat the Lamb of Elohim in observing his Passover and not Ishtar Easter?
I got it. And another question that I was curious about was Ephesians 4, I think 30, where it says, and do not grieve the Ruach Kodesh of Elohim, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. So the seal could be many. I know there's a lot of different teaching about sealing. So is that the initial sealing that he's talking about when we come to Yahusha and accept him?
I believe so. I believe so, Sarah. I believe when we were born anew, I believe he actually changes something on our DNA. And that's why I think the enemy is so gung-ho into getting our samples of DNA. And not too long ago, I was heard some teaching that made so much sense, and I can't really remember where I heard it. But remember when when Yahweh in Genesis takes the rib from the man to make woman,
Yeah.
how in my mind and others people's mind, we were actually thinking a rib. Well, another point of view that this one person conveyed was it was probably a sample of Adam's DNA and formed it, you know, because a DNA strand is like a ladder with a bunch of ribs, right? Connecting the two strands. And so, so there was another perspective on that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but that's.
And the other thing too, the bread. I mean, Matthew did a really good teaching one time. Was it unleavened bread during the Melchizedek Passover covenant confirming meal? Or was it a fullness of bread? And so that's another thing. That's another thing to contemplate. It's just a lot to it. And it's meant to be a lot to it. He wants us to dig in. He wants us to ponder. He wants us to look at what this transition is all about. Because no other generation had gone through it except for that first generation. And even Yahushua told them, you don't know what I'm doing right now, but you will. So, hey, it's very exciting. And I'm not proclaiming I know it all. I'm just thirsty every year and hungry to see what he reveals. And the more insights we get to it, the better, because we come up with some good stuff. And it's because Yah uses his body to reveal all these things. Okay, Damon?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, the idea that the Passover has more than one meaning is a truth supported by the Bible. Passover in Scripture can actually mean one or three things. It can refer to the annual holy day, the ceremony, or to the lamb itself. And as we read the Scriptures, we can decode it. And I got a bunch of Scriptures to read, but I'm not going to take up all your time. But the idea of the Passover has more than one meaning, and it's supported by the Bible. Passover in Scripture can actually mean one or three things. It can refer to the annual holy day, the ceremony itself, or to the lamb itself.
There you go.
So, there you go. And that's straight up out of Shauna's book.
Right. So that's awesome. And so which one does the Night of Watches go with? That's the kind of stuff, Dana, and I just want us to just ponder. I just want us to ponder, because that was a huge change when Yahushua ushered in the Melchizedek priesthood back to its reigning position. Just a huge shift. And
can I read a paragraph or two?
Oh, absolutely.
Thus, the term Passover, when referring to the lamb, has been fulfilled and finished. Should we then be keeping the ceremony or the annual day in our post-Calvary times? Yahushua was referring to the ceremony of the Passover supper, or Yahweh's supper, as it is often called, Lord's Supper. I don't like using that word, Lord. When he told his disciples that he wouldn't eat any more of it until it was fulfilled in the kingdom. And he said unto them, with desire, I have desire to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. But it wasn't Passover. For I say unto you,
Passover. He called it Passover.
Exactly. And I will not eat any more, therefore, till it be fulfilled in the kingdom. Here, Yahushua uses the words, eat this Passover, which might make one think that he is using the word Passover to refer to the lamb. However, the fact is that he is referring to the ceremony kept by eating Yahweh's supper is made clear by his next statement. I will not any more eat thereof till it be fulfilled in the kingdom. There will not be any killing or death in Elohim's kingdom. once this old sinful world is done away with, death will have an end. And it just goes on. She actually brings out the 3 different definitions of Passover, but I could be here for quite a while explaining that.
What book or document are you reading
This
from?
is the book she wrote in her early ministry, and it's called The Testimony of the Moon. And I think I don't even think you can get the book anymore. It's called The Testimony of the Moon, and she's really into the moon doctrine. So,
Okay.
but this particular chapter is in chapter 10, and it's called "Was Passover Stalked to the Tree?" And that's what it basically. The difficulty in understanding these concepts, that Christ as our Passover was sacrificed, and 2, that the ceremony will be fulfilled until we reside in the kingdom of Elohim, can be traced back to one root. We misunderstood the meaning of the word Passover. For these 2 concepts to exist side by side, the scriptures, which never contradicts itself, the word Passover must have more than one meaning. So we got work to do.
Yeah, we sure do. We sure do. But it's exciting, and hey, he's loving it, because what's important to him is important to us, and that's why we want to know and learn. And he'll bless us, and he'll show us, because it's his ruach that leads us to all truth. So that's great, Dana. That was very insightful. Thank you. And April. Oh, go ahead, Dana. Go ahead, Dana.
No. I was just going to say there's so much to read on that. I just barely touched it. But there's 3 different meanings. And thank you for letting me share.
Oh, absolutely. That was good stuff. April.
Yeah, Dana, keep your phone open, because I'm going to say something. I want to say it right. So if I'm not right, I want you to correct me. The night that he was betrayed, they had the evening meal, and they had bread, which is called lechem, and it could be flatbread, or it could be bread that's a nice big fat loaf. Okay, so they had both kind there. They had the full bread, which he tore it off, and he said to the disciples to have some of that bread. And I'm thinking that was the fullness, that he had come to the fullness of his ministry. But when they were to eat unleavened bread, you can't soak that. So what he gave to Judas, his ministry was full. Judas was full also of the other spirit. And so when he filled that full of I don't know what he sopped it in, but he gave that to Judas alone. And then the unleavened bread, that's supposed to represent us getting sin out of our life. But then at Wave Sheath, where we hold up 2 loaves that are full, big raised loaf breads, we wave that in front of the Father, because the Son has fulfilled all of his duties that he had to, that was required of him. And we're supposed to go from sin to cleansing, to fullness of life in that time period when we count the Omer. Now, did I do that right, Danon?
I believe so. I know that Judas received the normal bread, which represented sin, and that's one of the teachings I need to go back on and review. But yeah, it sounds right. Yeah, most definitely.
The fullness of, if it's the fullness of sin, or if it's the fullness of righteousness, correct?
I believe so. I believe so. That's a teaching that Tim and Charlene did, and it's one of those I need to go over everything they've done. Some of these teachings are like, oh my goodness gracious, I just don't have that mindset. I have to go over things and over it and over it and over it till I get it. I know that at Wave Sheath that it wasn't a barley loaf, because barley represented the adulterous woman. It was fine flour. Right. It was fine flour. So, yeah. Sometimes I just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with some of these things that we we contemplate, but they're important.
Right. And, I plan on, focusing a little bit each Shabbat on Passover as we get closer to it. So, we're going to continue to look at this up until the time of Passover, and then even more on Passover. And of course, I know everybody may have different plans, but I usually do a Zoom. I don't know what T4 is planning on doing this year. So, I mean, I'll consider if there's going to be a big gathering, we may consider that. We'll see where y'all leads us. But if we don't go anywhere, I usually do a Zoom all-nighter and just fellowship with whoever wants to come. And then Sarah, you have your hand up, and I know T4 is about to start their session, and many of you will be attending that too. We usually do too. So we'll need to wrap it up and attend their session too. Yes, Sarah?
No, I was just was asking Sister April. So you're saying there is, were you referring? First, he told them it's unleavened bread, and then when Yahushua gathered with his disciple, it was leavened bread, or were you saying referring to they have both kind of bread for Passover?
Okay, on the 13th, when he had his last meal with the disciples,
Yeah.
the Bible says you have to look the word up, but there's two different kinds of lechem, which is bread, and the bread that was served to Judas, he was full of the wrong spirit, but the disciples were full of the spirit of Yahuwah.
Yeah.
So that was the whole loaf of bread.
The manna from heaven that was full, had reached its
yeah,
fullness.
You're right. He gave
fullness.
Oh, I didn't never.
They ate of the bread of heaven, the
Yeah,
fullness, the righteousness.
Yes, he dipped it for Judas. He dipped it into something and he gave it. So that was the unleavened bread.
No,
it's the same bread.
That was fullness of bread. That was the lechem. That was the bread that was full, like you would buy at the grocery store for a sandwich.
Yeah. Challah bread.
If you would buy flat bread, like you would have for a Mexican meal,
yeah, we do that back home.
You don't stick that in any kind of juice. That wouldn't sop up anything, right?
Yeah,
so there was two different kinds of bread for two different types of situations that were going on.
Wow. Okay.
When we count the Omer from Passover over to Pentecost, we're supposed to get sin out of our life, so that the tortillas got to go, and we get the big sandwich bread, right?
And also the false doctrine. The leaven was a big representation of false doctrine and added doctrine to his word. That's a huge part of the meaning of leaven. And that is how it's defined in one of the scripture verses. I'll have to look it up to find it. But anyway, y'all, we had a great Shabbat, really good stuff, really great insights for us to ponder. And I look forward to next Shabbat. I look forward to continuing this conversation, Sarah. You're like us. We have a lot of the same questions. We haven't got it all worked out, but we're working through it together. So
just come here and say hi.
We'll have plenty of time to be there for you and you for us as we learn all this together.
You have to say hi. Get it. Do you hear me talking? Hi.
Hey.
That was my grandson being very shy. I can't do it now. Forget it. I'll turn the thing off and then it'll work.
Right. It was still a joyful noise.
Why? I don't know why it's not working. I've been doing so good with it. Maybe I'm doing it under pressure because he's here.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's under pressure. You can do it. Anyway. Do it.
Yeah, you're tired. Yeah.
You can do it, Mary.
There you go.